Listen, laugh, and learn with Sacha and Ish as they share their experiences, thoughts, and tips to build skills that are not so average and a career that's not so ordinary. This is the Not So Breakfast Show.
All right, welcome to the Not So Breakfast Show today. This is part 3 of our 3-part coaching series where we've been going under the microscope and looking at coaching a little bit closer. And to help me with the conversation and wrap up the whole series today, Sacha Coburn coming in and looking fantastic, can I just say. Where have you been today?
Thank you. I feel fantastic. I've got my stage face on. I have been delivering a keynote to the good people of Nestle in New Zealand, talking to them about how they can achieve their goals this year.
Brilliant.
So I feel very professional, and I'm hoping that's carrying through my voice.
Very much so. And I feel I've had both extremes. I've had dressing gown, Obi-Wan Kenobi Sacha, and now I've got high profile fashion icon Sacha. So yeah, you're absolutely rocking the spectrum.
Did you say supermodel?
Yeah, I see. Yes, let's do that.
That's what I heard.
Brilliant. So over the last couple of weeks, we've been sort of framing up coaching. You know, what does it take to coach? Where are the opportunities to coach? What are the skills that we need to develop and coach? And I don't want to recap it too much because you can just go in there and listen to it. So if you're listening to it in part 3 and you haven't done part 1 and 2, get on those first. They're a good ride. But to kind of wrap it all up today, I wanted to explore another coaching model because we did explore Grow last week, and you even expanded on Grow and made it even better by adding an extra W, which was good. So I'm hoping to see what you're going to do to our coaching model Fuel today, which we're going to go through. And then we've got a wee coaching model of our own, because what would it be if the Not So Breakfast Show didn't have its own coaching model that you can use? So yeah, let's get into that discussion.
I'm looking forward to it. One of the things I did suggest to Nestle when I was talking to them this morning, when I walked into the conference room, they have all these boxes of Milo all over the tables. Obviously, Milo is one of their brands. And I said, I've got a podcast with my dear friend Ish, and it's called the Not So Breakfast Show, and we need a breakfast food sponsor. So shout out to Milo. We're waiting for the money.
Yeah, I like that. I must admit, I do love a good Milo. So if we can get Milo in a few times,
Nothing better. Yum.
So we're going to look at the Fuel coaching model today. And you know what's good for Fuel, Sash? Milo. But today we are looking at the Fuel coaching model. And it's another acronym. And I know that you love acronyms that actually spell something that then support what we're talking about, and that we
You would not have a coaching model where the acronyms spelled suck or shrink,
fail,
shrivel up and die. It's quite a long model for shrivel up and die.
Oh, brilliant.
So yes, Fuel. Tell me about Fuel.
Okay, so Fuel was first developed by John Zinger and Kathleen Stinnett. And it's a coaching model very similar to Grow. It's framing up conversations and working through a framework or discussion point. And as we highlighted the other week, the importance of the model is really it gives you the structure to the conversation. So you don't end up jumping all around and kind of going all over the place. You've got a good base to start with. And the first one in our Fuel coaching model is frame. F stands for frame. Frame the conversation by setting the context and agreeing on what the discussion's purpose is, and you'll decide outcomes. So that's what you're framing up.
I love this idea that imagine that your life is a big mural on a wall, a massive mural on a wall. And so there's you, there's your family, there's your work colleagues, there's your sport, everything in your life is there. And when you go and talk to a coach, you want to zoom in on what's the bits that you want to talk to the coach about, or what's the specific thing that you have a goal towards or an issue with. And so you imagine you take a picture frame and you're going to put it on the wall and say, this is the bit we're talking about. And how wide or narrow your frame is helps provide context. So if, for example, you put up, you're driving in a car and you want to talk to the coach about your driving, if you frame up just you in the car, it might be, so you want to talk about how you drive the car. If you take a slightly wider frame, what that might show us is that there's you in the car, but there's another car that's about to hit you. So the frame is actually what's going on around you as you drive. Oh, I need to take into account other vehicles and other cars. You might zoom out further and you say it's actually a really rainy day. Okay, what does that tell us about driving in vehicles and cars? So how wide or how narrow you go with your frame really helps shape the conversation. And what are the bits that are just outside of the frame that still might also be relevant to the context? Is it the economic environment? Is it your family life that's relevant to how you feel at work? Is your work life relevant to how you feel at home? So where you put the focus is really critical to making the coaching conversation really useful for you.
Yeah, and also the importance of the frame is also that you're on the same page, right? You might be sitting down with someone and they go, right, I'm here to talk about my development opportunities, and you're sitting there going, right, we're going to be talking about why you've been underperforming at work. So I think framing is important from the perspective of what's going on, what's the environment, but also, are we on the same page here?
Yeah.
What's the purpose of the conversation? What do you need out of the conversation? What do I want to get out of the conversation? Right at the beginning, frame that up first. The next one is if you is the second, and it's understanding and exploring the current state from the individual's perspective. So where we're talking about framing up the conversation, but now we're starting to explore. So what do you think's been going on here? Like, what's your perspective of this situation? And really starting to understand that people bring different agendas and different perspectives to a conversation, and someone's understanding of something may be completely different to someone else. And that actually helps you identify the real issues.
I was working with an organisation a couple of years ago, and they were going through a transition period, and they were basically separating two different work teams. And when I interviewed both teams, each team thought that they were separating for the benefit of the other. So it was like, yeah, we're not working with them anymore because they couldn't handle blah, blah, blah. And the other team was like, yeah, we're not working with them anymore because it was getting too complex for them. And they both had the story that they legitimately believed that the whole process was for the benefit of the others. Both groups felt a little bit put upon, and they were martyrs and they were the heroes who, I was like, oh, wow, they were very genuine, good people who had just believed this thing to be true. So if you were going to help those teams move forward, continue to work together but separately, you have to understand, what are they bringing, what's their perspective. And obviously the power of questions really relevant here. How can you ask good questions to deepen someone's understanding and also to widen their perspective? So it's not just a case of understanding the person's view, it's also helping them broaden their understanding of what's actually happening.
Yeah. So in the context of fuel, it might be we frame up. We've got a couple of people that we're working with, or a group. We frame up what the conversation is like. While we're here today, what we're talking about. Here's the context. We all agree. Yes. And now the understanding part is the perspectives, right? And to your point, people can have different perspectives. It might have been that the frame was there was a bit of friction at the meeting the other day. We weren't listening to each other. We were talking over the top of each other. And as we then go through the perspectives in the you part, you might actually find that someone is actually saying, look, you're just not looking at this any other way than rose-colored glasses. You need to be able to look at the flip side of that. And it's not fair that I'm always put in that position where I'm having to defend that. We need to look at things robustly. And then suddenly it might be the other people in the room going, hadn't actually thought about that. Thought you're just being a Debbie Downer.
Yeah.
So then our next one is E. We've gone from FU into E, and E is explore. Explore opportunities, explore options, explore in more detail exactly what you might want to be getting out of it. So this could be things like you might be looking at options and then kind of prioritizing those, or what could we do in this state? What would happen if we didn't change? If we didn't do this, who might do that? So all of the exploring to try to get as much context.
Yeah, and I love thinking of exploration as a literal exploration. So if we were 200, 300, 400 years ago and we didn't know about the world in terms of what countries were there, we wouldn't just sail for an hour in our ship and then come back and go, no, nothing there. And I think that's what we sometimes do when we're in these explore phases. We just take one tiny step beyond where we are now and go, that's it. I've done my exploration. I've done my deep dive. If we were digging for treasure in the front garden, you wouldn't just dig one hole and go, yeah, no, there's no treasure here. You dig another one and another one and another one. And it can be exhausting, but it's worthwhile to just keep digging, keep turning stones, keep sailing into uncharted waters till you get really to the limits of what might be possible within the frame.
Yeah.
And within that understanding. I think too often in coaching, we're so desperate for answers and certainty that as soon as we hit on a possible solution or a possible avenue to explore, we go, oh, phew, that's good, we're done. And the first thing we think of won't always be the best.
Yeah. And this is where another model might be helpful, like De Bono's thinking hats, right? Being able to sit around the table and go, all right, black hat on. What could go wrong here? What's negative about this? And then putting a different one on, which like, what's all the sunshine, rainbows, and glitter about this situation? Or how can we think about this creatively? Or how can we think this from a financial perspective? Those different ways of coming at something, but doing it together to explore all the options on the table, rather than maybe defending your position because you don't want to be proven wrong, but actually isn't the outcome to get the right outcome, the best outcome for the entire team.
Exactly that. This is goodish. I need to listen to this once we've finished. Because I always think of those things like this is useful in coaching, but it's also just so useful in how I approach problems or challenges in my own life. Like, yes, coaching others, but also just a framework to go, okay, what do you want? What's your understanding? Good, keep going. Preach to me, my brother.
All right, the next one is L, which is layout. So we're going to lay out a success plan. So we've worked through F, we've gone through frame, we know what we're talking about. We've gone through U, understand, different perspective, what's exactly going on. We've explored opportunity, options, everything is out on the table, and now we need to lay it out. What's the plan? What's the steps? What's the process we need to follow in order to achieve the new goal or embed the new strategy or follow the solutions that we've just designed together?
And I'm completely okay with the plan. It needs to be robust early, and then I'm not so concerned about later. I think so much changes at such a great pace now that any time that you're spending planning for sort of month 4 is pretty much a waste of time. I think you want to be really detailed about taking some action now. What are you doing tomorrow? What are you doing this week? What are you doing next week? And a month's time, what's the check-in? And the check-in might be in 1 month's time to review the layout of the next few months. I think we sometimes spend too much time planning 24 months as if everything remains constant. And if there's one thing we know right now, it doesn't remain constant.
No.
So let's just do 3 months with a view to what 6 months might look like. I mean, companies are still doing annual planning. Yep, okay, good. But as long as you've got those check-in and reviews, because things are changing so quickly.
Love it. So that is the fuel model. Again, it doesn't really matter which ones you use. You want to find the one that resonates for you, and sometimes using different models is good because it breaks open your thinking and kind of gives it a different framework for you to kind of work through. But why don't we kind of talk about different types of coaching scenarios that you may end up being part of? And as far as like you're in a room and there's a facilitator and it's a coaching discussion, you're working through a framework, or that you're leading, or that you might even be involved in and someone is coaching you. So the first type of coaching is coaching for underperformance. So let's say that someone isn't doing what they need to do, and heaven forbid, it's obviously not the listener of this show, because obviously if you've been listening to a Not So Breakfast show, you're not an underperformer, you're a high performer, and you may be doing this conversation, but underperformance
just shout out to Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk for signing and checking in today. It's good to have you guys with us. Thank you.
Excellent. Let me just take a sip of my Milo as well. So, coaching for underperformance is something that as managers we need to be able to get good at, because there are people in our team that we are trying to develop, and sometimes that development is off the back of some underperformance. So maybe someone didn't hit the mark, or someone did a conversation or something they shouldn't have done. We don't want to just write them off, right? This is development. We're managers, we're leaders, we're developing people. So you use that. Here was what happened. This wasn't the best way to go about it. We agree that, that wasn't the right way. What's a way that you could have gone about it better? What plans could you put in place next time? And then go forth and do that. Like that is kind of the nature of these underperformance style conversations, but definitely underperformance can be an opportunity for development.
I love that. And I also have not a different perspective because we're saying the same thing. I think what we sometimes tend to do is we see underperformance as being like hard conversations or underperformance as bad. But when you are in a high performance environment, almost all performance is underperformance. So my challenge would be if you have no underperformance in your organization, then perhaps you're not aiming for much. Perhaps your sights are too low, your targets aren't hard enough. Because in theory, if you're continually aspiring for more and more higher levels of performance, most people will be underperforming against those high targets. So there's the conversations that you're talking about, which we might, let's call them quote unquote genuine underperformance. Someone's not even getting up to a baseline. But if you think of high-performing sports teams, athletes, people that are measuring their performance all the time, they are often underperforming and they are constantly asking themselves, where's the next little bit? Where's the next little bit? Where am I going to get there? So I like a slight mindset shift also that says underperformance is good as long as everyone is on the same page about we are continually trying to get better and improve. So it doesn't just have to be, oh, sucks, you're having an underperforming conversation. It's like, hey, guys, we're not achieving the things that we set out. What are we doing about it? Let's go. It can actually be a really energizing way to operate, not just there's the naughty kid having the naughty underperforming chat.
We'll be right back.
If there was one skill that could double your income, advance your career, and increase your ability to influence, it is the skill of presenting. Whether it's on stage, in the boardroom, or at a job interview, the 30-Minute Presenter program will help take you to the next level. So check out our Instagram page, click the link in the bio, and get started on the 30-Minute Presenter program. Well, it's a relevant conversation within high-performing teams because there could be pockets of underperformance where it's about getting someone else up to be running at the pace that the other team members are at. But to your point also, how do you then coach high-performing teams if they are all doing really well or underperforming but in a good way because we're stretching and striving? But also what defines what the lid was? So, the team that actually, it's like, we're a high-performing team. It's like, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you? And if you're an 8, how do you get to a 10 or how do you get to 11 or 12 or 13? Because actually, there are other people that would probably say that their team is way more high-performing than the team you're working with. So even just stretching expectations or setting expectations of what high performance looks like.
I'm so inspired by the story of the runners that were always trying to break various records. And also fascinated. So remember when way back in the day they were trying to break the 4-minute mile? They were trying to run a mile in 4 minutes and no one could do it and no one could do it. And it was just this barrier. And for years people were competing around the track. And then finally when the first guy did it, you can imagine what happened. In rapid succession, a number of other people who were his peers also ran a 4-minute mile. And so their bodies hadn't changed, the track hadn't changed, but someone had done it and proved that it was possible. Yep. So there must have been a switch that switched in people's belief that went, oh, this can be done. And so I love the idea of continually stretching. You could be the first person to do the thing that no one's ever done. And then I say to myself, if one other person's done it, surely it's got to be possible for me to do it or for it to happen on a repeated basis.
Another type might be where you're actually just coaching sort of specific skills. So there is a range of skills that people have, and then some might be weaker for certain members of a team. And it's not saying that what they're doing is wrong, but it's like, how do we coach that skill competency in or make them aware of a skill competency that's not yet in play? Because you may just be operating the same pattern that you've been operating all the time, right? We tend to go into those defaults. When this happens, I default to this pattern and this is the one I run because it's the only one I'm aware of. However, suddenly it could be, actually, if I had this skill set, I could probably do it a completely different way. And that could be from a technology perspective, but it can also just be a competency within what we would call soft skills, right? Your ability to kind of handle resilience and handle high pressure situations or not be as nervous, like those skills that we can actually embed into someone that actually makes them more relaxed in certain situations.
Think about when you're teaching your kids to drive and the coaching that goes along with that. And then what is so incredibly frustrating, and I don't know if you've experienced this, is once they've got their license, they're very much completely uncoachable about the way they drive. So if you think about the driving hours that I have, that Chris has under our belts, the fact that Portia has passed her license test means she is now immune to any kind of feedback about her driving because she has a license now.
Yeah.
And so right up into that point of certification, coachable, tell me what to do, tell me how to pass, let me be a safe driver. As soon as she has her license, knows everything, not coachable. Now, this is not a pick on Portia session. I'm sure this is pretty a universal experience, but I think it's a really interesting thing because I think when people get a job, they might have had some coaching to be good enough to get the job, and now they've got the job, they go, well, good, I don't need coaching anymore. Wrong. It's like there's no point in time that you go, yeah, I'm done. There's nothing for me to learn here. And I think that's why the analogies to sports performance are so relevant or useful when we talk about coaching, because every weekend golfer is going to benefit from some more coaching, even if they've been going 20, 30 years. And yet every business executive is not open to coaching on running a better meeting or having a better quality conversation or building relationships in a way that's more meaningful for people. And the reason they resist is because they go, I've been doing this stuff for years. Yeah, but you've been playing golf for years too. And you're open to getting better there. So why wouldn't you be open to getting better in your workplace? Marriage coaching. How can I be a better wife? How can I be a better whatever? Yeah. Well, no, not whatever, wife. I mean, wife. How can I be a better wife? Do you know what I was going to say? I was going to say, and I stopped myself. I was going to say, how can I be a better wife? How can I be a better cook? And I'm like, no, I'm uninterested in being a better cook. I'm interested in getting someone else to do more cooking. It doesn't have to be Chris. I don't care, just someone.
Well, maybe even picking up on your example of the driving, right? So we train our kids and we teach our kids and then they consider themselves competent at driving. But it's quite interesting. If you ask everybody how they rate themselves as a driver, most people say above average. Well, that can't be true, right? We can't all be above average. We've got to have some average. And then if you go with the spectrum, it's like, well, okay, so the person that's just had their license, that's never had an accident, but is driving, to like Formula One race car driver. Like the ability of driving is as much on a spectrum as the ability of public speaking, as the ability of dealing with conflict, as the ability of any of those skill sets. It's all on a spectrum. So at some point, there is always a next level. There's always the level up. There's always the next level of development. And if you're open to that, wow, that's where you start to really see the shifts in your performance and the shifts in your competency.
The old cheesy classic, it's what you learn after you know it all that really counts.
Yeah, love it. So I have been having a bit of a think about coaching models, Sash, and I thought it would be amiss not to maybe have our own coaching model for the Not So Breakfast Show. And so I have done a little bit of thinking and I think I've cracked it.
What I especially love about this is that what other podcasts do is they would discuss in advance what their shared coaching model would be. I have so much trust in your ability that I'm just going to agree with whatever our coaching model is on the Not So Breakfast Show that you've come up with and you're going to deliver now. I'm 100% on board and I'm as excited as everybody else to hear what it is.
That's the high trust that we have.
Yeah, you're my brother, except you're not my brother.
Well, it's not an acronym as such, so it doesn't spell anything, but it does say something. So the Not So Breakfast Show coaching model is Not So Breakfast Show. And the first one is not. All right, so that's what's not working right now. What's not going the way that you expected it to be? What's not a skill or an ability that you've got? So that's going to be our framing conversation is around not. So Not So Breakfast Show.
I love it. What's missing? Where's the opportunity to improve?
Brilliant. So then we go from not and we go into so. So what would you like it to be?
What are you going to do about it?
So what are you going to do about it?
What do you want it to be? What do you want it to be? I love this.
Yeah. So we go, it's not this. So what should it be? And then we go into break. I've actually taken breakfast and I've broken it into 2 words, break and fast. Break is the first one. So what is some of the habits that you need to break in order to embed some new ones? What's a mindset that you might need to break in order to build a new one? So it's really around what do you need to stop doing What patterns do you need to stop running? What do you need to kind of break the cycle with in order to put in the next step? It's genius, right? I'm building it up.
I like it a lot.
And then the next one is fast. So what is a fast action you could take now to get started on this next mindset, this next level, this next step? What's something you can do within the next 10 minutes, half an hour that's actually going to start embedding this in? As soon as this conversation's over, I want one fast action in place.
This is genius. Actually, I'm having an intellectual orgasm. It's like, yes, not so break fast.
Yep.
Yes, not so break fast.
I know. And then the last one is show, which is how are you going to be showing up? Show me what the future looks like. Show me what you're prepared to do in order to get this. I'm like, it's been staring us right in the face the whole time, Sacha.
I'm like Meg Ryan. Yes. Yes.
So it's not so breakfast show coaching model. You heard it here first, and please go out there and use the frame before we copyright it.
Why did we waste time doing that fuel and grow shit? Like, this is good.
This is it. You wait till the Milo coaching model comes out. All right, so hopefully you've got some great context around coaching. I know you've got some great models there for coaching, including the new one that we've just come up with, but these are things that you do need to practice. Like, don't make the first time you use a coaching model literally the first time you use a coaching model. Have a bit of a play with your own thinking. Have a bit of a play where you just sit down with a team and discuss an idea through that, so that when you're authentically in a coaching conversation, when the student is ready, when the conversation is ready to be had, you've got something prepared, you've got something in your back pocket that you can kind of go, hey, let's have a chat about this. Boom, 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 boom. And it'll feel structured and you'll make way more impact.
Learn how to be a great coach and learn how to be coachable. So I am reading this fantastic book. It's called Same as Ever by a guy, Morgan Housel. And he's the best-selling author of The Psychology of Money. And he just asks these questions about the future. So he reckons we can't forecast the future. People are always saying, what's going to change? Let's try and predict. And he flips that on its head and says, let's ask a different question. What will be the same 10 years from now, and what will be the same 100 years from now? So he's actually just got 23 short stories, like little incidents from history or things that have happened in recent history that unpack this idea of if you're going into business and you're looking, what's the change? What's the shift? No, what's going to stay the same?
Yeah.
So he's saying people are always going to be, this is pretty dark, but people are always going to be greedy. They're always going to suffer from envy. They're always going to need to be fed. They're always, and if you start thinking about these things that are known, how can you respond in a business context to those ideas? And it's really interesting. So it's all about risk. How do you assess risk? How do you assess what a good opportunity is versus a not so good opportunity? And I'm loving it. I've just smashed it out on the plane yesterday coming back from Christchurch, and it's so well written. Oh, I love it when a book is well written. It's got some really challenging stuff in it, and it's the first book in ages that I've wanted to pull out a highlighter and actually highlight some things. That's how old I am. I want to remember, but he talks about how you value companies, which I think is really interesting. He basically says the value of a company is today's number multiplied by a story you're telling about tomorrow.
Brilliant.
That's good, right?
That is very good.
A number from today multiplied by a story you're telling about tomorrow.
Wow.
So that's just so true. Here, our sales from today, and here's how they're going to grow exponentially in the future. Our profit today, and here's what's going to happen in the future. It's gold. I love it. I love it.
That's good. That's feeding my mind with just a few conversations.
Get it.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what isn't going to change 10 years or 100 years from now, and that is the joy you get from a great cup of Milo. So make yourself a Milo today and enjoy the Not So Breakfast Show.